Hey everybody, welcome back to TeleByte Automotive. You can see here today we are in the 2007 Lexus GS350 all-wheel drive. We are getting ready to do a procedure on this car that I feel will be helpful for you guys because I didn't see very many videos pertaining to this procedure on the internet. So I will be showing you how to replace the inner CV boot on your all-wheel drive 2007 to like 2006 to 2011 Lexus sedan. This is the GS, but this might work for other models as well. So what we've already done is we've jacked the driver's side of the car up because that's the one that has blown on my side. I'll show you here in a minute. And we have taken off the driver's side wheel. Symptoms of a bad or leaking CV boot is like a clunking or clicking noise when you're turning. I haven't experienced that yet, but let me just go ahead and show you here. Okay, so you can get a bit of a look there. That is the torn CV boot. You can see all the grease leaking out of there. And that's what we're fixing today. You can see grease is splattered on the inside of the wheel well. So, yeah, go ahead and jack it up and take your wheel off on the one or the ones that need to be replaced. Okay guys, so what we're doing right now is we are using a dial caliper to measure the circumference of the caliper of the CV boot that's already on the car, and here is our new one. So we just need to make sure the measurements line up here. So good? Alright, so we are good to go. Let me go ahead and show you. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and show you here. This is what you get with the kit that I bought. It's from Beck & Arnley. I bought this off of Rock Auto for about $20 after shipping, which is a very good deal considering that dealerships will charge you $500,000-$600,000 to do the same job. The Lexus dealership quoted me to do one side. They quoted me $1,000 to have the CV boot changed. So you can see it comes with these little brackets and the gaskets, instructions, the boot itself, and CV boot grease to keep that lubricated. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and start tearing the car apart. This is a pretty involved job. Give yourself a few hours, if not more, to do this because quite a bit of stuff has to come off. But just try your best to stay organized and you should be in good shape.
Next up, we're going to number 17. I'm going to take these two caliper bolts off, remove the caliper, and hang it from here. You might need to have a trusty breaker bar because they're on pretty tight.
That 10 specifically.
Recording. So now that we have our large caliper off, you don't ever want to let it hang from the hose because you can kink and break the hose. So we're going to hang it from the upper control arm or from the spring here.
So you can see here we have the caliper tied on to the spring with a bungee cord and then held on. You never want to disconnect your brake line and just take the caliper off completely because doing that will introduce air into your brake system, and that's not something that most people will want to mess with. Alright, so we just took the big bolt that holds the rotor and the hub on off with a 1/3/16. Don't know if you guys can see that. Yeah, there you go. Socket. And now we can go ahead and move on to the next step. So this will allow your rotor and some other things to completely come off, because what we're trying to do Just trying to get back to that inner boot over there.
So if your rotor is stuck to the hub, you can just use these bolt holes here, thread a couple bolts through them, and then tighten these bolts down, and it'll push that off for you, and then it'll slide right off. So there's a lot of rust that gets built up over time, and it makes it hard to take off. And then find a place to set this where it won't. Whenever my son and I go to the junkyard, we'll just pick this kind of stuff up off the ground around cars, or take some things off a Toyota, and then I start like a little collection of nuts and bolts and stuff, so that way when you're doing this kind of thing, you can find some things that fit your need. Next, we need to remove this bracket that holds the wheel speed sensor off, so that way when we remove the control arm, it won't put tension on that. It's just a number 10. So another thing that I'll do so I don't lose my bolts is take your bolt and thread it back in that when you're done, so that way when you go put things back together again, you're not searching around for the right one. Filming?
Yeah.
All right, so now we're going to remove this cotter pin from this nut here, and then we'll try to remove this. So take this off. This is a 17 again. And what I'll do is I take this off. I don't want to take it all the way off. So now this should be able to.
So what are we doing?
First, we're just removing this band, so we can just pull this axle out.
So we removed the bands already. Now what he's trying to do is he's trying to get the boot to come off of the axle a bit here, and you can go ahead and chop up at these old boots because you're not putting them back on. You don't have to take them off in any particular way. So we're just using a pair of dikes, and there's that other band right there that we just cut off. We also have a little bucket down there to catch any ball bearings or ball bearings that might fall out, so they fall out onto a clean surface.
It's a messy, greasy job, so keep a rag handy.
So razor blade, just gonna go ahead and cut the rest of this old boot away. So you can see all that grease just dripping out of there. Looks like sewage.
Yeah, so now what we're going to do is we should just be able to pull this. See these bearings right here? Don't let those bearings fall out of there. Put a rag underneath them. Okay. There you go. And then take this someplace safe.
Alright, so we've now removed the old one, and we will now move on to installing the new one.
Alright, so now that we have this out of the car, and these don't come off, so, well, I mean, they do, but they don't just fall off like some other ones that I've seen. So when you're pulling it out of the car, you don't have to be so careful because they're not going to fall on the floor or anything. I wasn't quite sure what was going to happen. Anyway, mount your axle in a vise. So now what we need to do is we need to take this the snap ring off, and then we'll have to pull this bearing set off of the axle splines. So get your snap ring pliers. Don't want to lose that guy. Also, I don't know if this is necessary or not, but I made some match marks with some paint, so that way I know I'm going to line everything back up perfectly when I take it off and put it on again. And it's probably a pretty good idea to go ahead and clean this all up when you're in there. our car wasn't making any noises like clicking or popping when turning tight, so the brake and the boot was fairly new and recent, so there wasn't any dirt and that kind of stuff inside here. If you have that kind of noise, then I would think that you don't even want to reuse your CV axle. You'll want to get a brand new one. But as long as you don't have any noises and that kind of thing, you can just kind of clean this up and then repack it with grease. You should be good to go. Okay, so I'm going to try to put this boot back on. We've got these kind of bands. I don't like these bands. I don't have the right tool for this band, so I made this little thing. We're going to see if this is going to work or not. Anyway, we'll put the clamp on first. I took some grease and greased up the outside of the boot there, so hopefully this will slide right over, like so. These are the kind of clamps that I prefer. These good guys right here. These are the ones that come on most Toyotas and stuff. And they work really well. They're very easy to clamp on. You've got this silly thing you got to mess with here. So let's see how our tool's going to work. I want to switch it, flip it around. And of course they sell a special tool to do these clamps with, but I don't have the tool and nobody seems to sell it, so we're going to just as much slack up off it as you can. Alright, so we got this band on here. They suck, they're a pain in the ass, I don't like them. It broke and it was barely short enough, but basically what you got to do is tighten this up with that little tool. You roll it up and it tightens it up, and then you push this over like this, close these two clamps down, and then push it back over on top, so it looks like that. So now that's on there. Okay. Alright, now we get to grease everything up here. And remember, we got our match marks here. We can hopefully match those up good. Now we gotta pack these bearings full of grease. Trying to get grease in these needle bearings here. Clean out as much of this old grease as we can. Kind of it doesn't have to be perfect, but so if you look here, you can see that this boot has ridges here. Those ridges need to line up with that because they made up to that surface there. So they want to try to have those ridges lined up. And we'll see if we can. There we go. Okay, that boot is seated on there now. Alright, now we put our silly little band back on here. Okay, try to clean all this stuff up off your boot the best you can. I also recommend you go ahead and try to clean all the crap off the car now. Tell if it's leaking again.
Okay guys, we got a little contraption rigged up here. We're trying to torque down the the axle
I
spindle.
don't want to do that either. I don't want to bend these things.
And we're having trouble because it needs to be torqued to 217 foot-pounds, but we're nervous about putting that much pressure on these delicate components. So, and add insult to injury, our torque wrench only goes to 150 foot-pounds.
I mean, I'll just have to. It's tight. So, one last thing that you have to do. Do you see that? You see that?
I think so.
You'll notice when you take the old nut off that this was pushed in so that nut can't back off. I suppose you could try to hammer it out and everything, but when we took it off, it broke, and I didn't feel comfortable reusing this nut, so we got one Dorman 615224. They're like $7, so I figured $7 a good peace of mind. It's not going to fail, but you're going to want to basically just take a punch and then essentially punch it down in that groove. So when you're attaching this, the upper control arm to the spindle, when you're attaching that, a lot of times this thing is connected to a ball joint in here, and when you just are trying to use like a regular ratchet, that ball joint will just spin inside there and you can never get it tight. You have to use an impact wrench to get that thing tight and then stick your cotter pin in there. So I couldn't torque that because it just kept spinning, so I just put my torque or my impact gun on there and just tightened it as tight as it could get, and then lined it up there. Same with that. Now you can see this dent here. This will not allow this nut to back off now. And then we'll put our caliper back on. I think the torque value we said was 58 foot-pounds.
58 foot-pounds.
And then we'll be pretty much done, except we got to we'll get our band tomorrow and put our band on this axle, and that's it. All in all, it was not a bad, it's pretty easy to do. Like if I were to do it again, I could do it in, a half hour. It's really easy actually to take it apart. But first time always is a learning experience. So hopefully our learning experience will help you not make the same mistakes we made and save you a lot of money, because it's really not that hard if you've got the right tools to do it. So,
like I said, Lexus quoted me over $1,000 to do one side for this job. So spent about $30-$40 all in all doing it here ourselves. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please post in comments below. Have a good day.